I don't think he'll get a warm reception in D.C.
Well, that was an understatement because the whole meeting went south right from the beginning. When Trump greeted Zelenskyy at the White House, Zelenskyy wearing his traditional T-shirt with the symbol of Ukraine on it, and Trump quipping, "Oh, you got all dressed up." From there to the Oval Office, where it all went south, with somehow J.D. Vance acting as a game show moderator.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over there. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, here.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia, the 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with, I don't know what happened, but he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
After the Oval Office meeting, Trump issued the following statement. I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. For more on this, let's go to Ukraine and an interview I did with journalist Phil Ittner a few days ago.
The atmosphere here in Ukraine is that the United States and Donald Trump have betrayed this country, that they work in the interests of Moscow, and that the president of the United States is more in tune with the ideals and the worldview of the Kremlin than he is with Western liberal democracy. So, pretty disappointing.
Yeah, this whole deal to me, I get the same impression I get as Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown to come and kick it, that he's just going to pull, he's got something up his sleeve, and you just can't trust the man. And as you say, a lot of these minerals lie in the eastern part of the country, which is under Russian control. So everything's got to stop. They're going to go into an area that's been ravaged by war for 3 years and suddenly set up mining operations. I don't know. It just sounds like it doesn't work.
Well, meanwhile,
did you
meanwhile,
see?
he's also
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Meanwhile, he's also successfully driven a rift between. I mean, I don't know how much longer NATO is even going to exist. Because he's shown himself not to be, is the U.S. going to come, if the Baltic states are next on Vladimir Putin's wish list, does anybody even remotely think that Donald Trump is going to abide by Article 5 and come to the defense of, Estonia? So does the transatlantic alliance mean anything anymore? Or, as the administration has been saying for, since the inauguration, that Europe is no longer our interest. We're pivoting to Asia. We see that as our major threat. And you're a bunch of freeloading Europeans, and NATO's a thing of the past, which is exactly what the Kremlin wants. The Kremlin is getting everything it wants. And it running roughshod over the United States of America. And they're winning. They are outright winning the war that they're conducting against the United States of America. They've always said, and they've found fertile ground in the West and in America, particularly in the MAGA world, that there's a proxy war. It's not Ukraine that we're fighting; it's the West and ultimately the United States of America. They say that repeatedly. Well, if that's the case, then they're attacking us, and they've been attacking us for quite some time. And the fact that we have a president, the chief executive, clearly compromised by Moscow. I mean, it's indisputable. He is for one way, by hook or by crook, he is compromised by Vladimir Putin's Moscow and the Kremlin. I mean, he parrots their talking points word for word. So I'm shocked that more Americans aren't, out there upset about this, because we do have a Manchurian candidate in many ways. I mean, it's not like he's literally been hypnotized by the Kremlin, but the mind virus, the worm, and the world perspective is definitely in Donald Trump and in many in the Trump administration. So we're getting our ass handed to us, pardon my language, by the Kremlin. And we are at very real risk of losing our democracy. We're at very real risk of losing our place on the global stage, which, even if you're an isolationist American, the oceans aren't going to save us in the 21st century. We're susceptible to cyber attack. We're susceptible to psychological warfare and information warfare, so much to the point that, again, POTUS is compromised.
I wish I could say I didn't see this coming, but I did. And we talked about this the last time we chatted, that Trump just cannot be trusted, and he immediately pivoted. The UN resolution was one thing, calling Zelenskyy a dictator, a guy with only 4% popularity ratings, which was a complete lie. So all this being said, what does Ukraine do about it? What can they do about it?
Well, they have almost universal support from Europe.
Yeah, but what is Europe going to do? I mean, is there an appetite for a European army to come to the rescue of Ukraine?
Well, there is a European military-industrial complex that can be brought to bear immediately. Although that's problematic because of the NATO agreement. A lot of these weapon systems have a whole bunch of moving parts that are kind of brought together and assembled, and oftentimes with the U.S. military-industrial complex, there are components that go into, say, a French fighter jet that were made by Lockheed Martin, but because of our NATO partnership, we gave it to them, in a cooperative manner. But oftentimes with a usage clause where you cannot use these weapon systems to go against X, Y, or Z, and so you could hobble if Trump really wants to be a villain, and wants to literally throw his lot in with the DPRK, the Kremlin, even China to a certain degree, because it's the same worldview. But if you really wanted to hurt Ukraine's efforts to defend itself, he could restrict European arms producers from on passing to Ukraine, because there's an American component in the weapon system. Having said that, the Europeans are no slouches. They're not, they're capable of production. A European army is going to take a long time to organize, and what that structure, what that alliance structure would look like is, will have to be hashed out, and that's not going to happen tomorrow. Ukraine, on the plus side, is now up to 40% domestic production of its defense capabilities. They churn out 4 million drones. They have the capacity to churn out 4 million drones, I believe it was. No, it's 4 million each year. And drone war, they're experts at drone warfare. They have, lots of practical experience with them. So they're probably the best fighting force in the world right now. when it comes to drones. So they have that, and then of course they also have the will to fight and to continue to fight. That's not going to change because it's existential. Moscow's stated intent is to destroy the concept of Ukrainian nationhood. It's an identity. And of course, that's not acceptable. And so they're going to continue to fight. And I've said this all along since the war began, is that our option really isn't, can we force the Ukrainians to stop fighting by withdrawing our support? If we withdraw our support, all we're going to do is sit on the sidelines and watch as a lot more Ukrainians die. That's the metric. Because they're not going to stop fighting. There is still a very strong will in this country to continue to fight against Russia.
And
so now we sit by and watch them die, though.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, speaking of fighting, though, spring is coming, and that's usually when the offensives begin on one side or the other. I mean, do you sense that Ukraine is going to mount an offensive this spring to try and push back as much as they can before, or do they sit back and say, let's give peace a chance, or what?
Well, if the war continues and there is no ceasefire or there's no negotiation or anything like that, and it's just the status quo as we go into spring, the section along the Donbass, which is in the southeast of the country, the area that Russia is primarily interested in because it's the physical land bridge between mainland Russian Federation and the Crimean Peninsula. The fighting will continue there. I suspect the Russians will continue to gain ground slowly but surely at massive cost to Russia's armed forces and its troop numbers. But that's a tough battle out there. There's a lot of ground to be covered if you're Russia, you want to get to a town called Kramatorsk. That would be the objective. And Kramatorsk is a city of approximately several hundred thousand people, built for several hundred thousand people. It's an industrialized city. It's a transportation hub. It's a rail hub. It's seen as kind of the gateway to the entire Donbass. I don't think the Russians, even with America's withdrawal, I don't see Russia having the capability to get to take Kramatorsk. They might be able to get to it. They'll fight over it. But it'll be an absolute bloodbath. And I don't know how much more the Russians have it in them to keep doing that kind of stuff. They're going to cross the 1 million man casualty mark in maybe another month or two. Estimates are like maybe June, July. They're going to cross that 1 million man mark. It's been a devastating war for them. And they're unfortunately for Ukraine and for Russia, but I have less compassion for Russia because they're the aggressors. They can't stop. Putin can't stop. What does he do with all the men who have been conscripted? He can't send them home because there are no jobs at home because the entire economy has been shifted to a war economy. So he is paying these soldiers out of the coffers of the Kremlin, Moscow's coffers, and he can't keep doing that for much longer either. But he can't send them home because then he's got a revolt on his hands. He's got hundreds of thousands of men who just went through battle, unemployed, sitting at home drinking vodka. That's not a good recipe for Vladimir Putin. So he's kind of in a catch-22. And I don't know what that means on the battlefield, but it's not good. Ukrainians, of course, will have a lack of weaponry, artillery in particular, I suspect. Long-range artillery will not be as available to them. Again, they'll still have their drone program and the soldiers themselves and their will to fight. So I don't know what's going to happen in Donbass, but I know it's going to be bloody. Up north near Kharkiv, um, they might chip away at a couple of villages on the approach to Kharkiv, but Kharkiv is a town built for over 1 million people. I think it's 1.2 or 1.7. I'd have to check my record or just check the details of it. But it's exponentially larger than Kramatorsk, and I don't think they can take Kramatorsk. Kharkiv is also an industrialized town with lots of foundries and machine part factories, and God help any Russian soldier that goes into that city. It'll be Stalingrad. It won't be Mariupol. It'll be Stalingrad. The nooks and crannies of that place and the reinforced nature of those factories. It'll be god awful. It'll be a nightmare to watch. And then finally, the last front, when it comes to stuff happening in the spring, is Ukraine's own intrusion and attack into the Russian Federation in the Kursk Oblast. They continue to take ground in Kursk. The Ukrainians do, not at lightning speed, and it's a sliver of territory, but it might allow them a negotiation. Something that they can use in negotiation as a leveraging point. But also there is the possibility that they really could make a breakout in Kursk, because there just aren't a lot of their troops. Russia moved troops into Kursk, but they have not been digging in Kursk. The Russians have not, for unlike the Ukrainians, who have been digging in Donbass for over 10 years and have strategic defense in depth, which is miles and miles of trench lines and tank defenses and things like that. The Russians didn't do that in Kursk because, of course, the Russians never suspected that the Ukrainians would be so audacious. And so there's a lot more maneuverability in Kursk for the Ukrainians to do some stuff. But they've also, Moscow recognizes that would be very bad if they had a massive breakout. So they moved troops there. So there are your three frontline areas for any kind of spring armed forces, clashes. Some could say there's a threat from Belarus in the kind of northwest, but I don't think that's the case. I think those are our three sectors we keep an eye on when it comes to combat. But the worst of it all is that we're also going to be losing air defense. The Patriot missile system, which has been so effective in defending Ukrainian cities that may be off the line, including the capital here. Those munitions are going to be less and less. And then overarching, by the way, if America pulls out its access to their GPS system for targeting, we're going to see a lot more Russian missiles slamming into Ukrainian cities that we hadn't seen before, notably here in Kyiv. But I think we'll see an increase in attacks in Odessa. Kherson is already constantly under attack by drones. The story of Kherson is tragic beyond belief, and it's going to get worse, I suspect. Zaporizhia, up the river, they could get more medium range ballistic missiles. And same with cities out in the west, including Lviv or Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk. It's the prognosis, it's not good to predict, looking forward, it's not good. A lot of Ukrainians are going to die because Donald Trump has, he's betrayed them. So it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be our fault.
Did you see anything in the way of preparation for this, knowing that this was coming? in Ukraine government, anticipating that Trump would throw them under the bus?
Well, they had cautious optimism for Trump. They were hoping that his ego and his ire would turn towards Putin because Putin would be unwilling to negotiate and work with Trump. That's not how it's played out. Yes, there's lots of preparations that have been happening in the possibility that America would, but there's some things they can do and there's some things they can't do. For example, there's been a lot of talk about Elon Musk and his Starlink system, his mobile satellite internet system that's been used on the front lines to, control drones and things like that, and getting satellite imagery and the like. You need to have mobile internet, but that can't be trusted on. So there's been a lot of work on developing alternatives to the Starlink system, whether or not that's actually mobile internet or whether or not that's changing to drones that don't need the internet. There are these drones that have been developed that have massive spools of fiber optic cable. The Russians seem to have an edge on that, but the Ukrainians, I think, are stepping it up. But as far as air defense is concerned, they're hoping for systems from Europe, but I don't think there's a way around it. I think we're going to get pelted. I think there's going to be a long period of time throughout 2025 when Ukrainian cities will come under air attack with seriously hampered defenses, which means the people in this city are going to die. That there are going to be, missile attacks that hit the capital, and casualty rates among the civilian population is going to, go up significantly. And it'll be a tragedy, and it'll be a lot of blood if indeed it happened. Now, is there the possibility we avoid all of that by strong-handing Ukraine into a peace deal that doesn't guarantee its lasting security? Highly unlikely. They're not stupid. The Ukrainians are not stupid, and they know their enemy better than us. And they know that if Russia walks away with, a victory here, they'll just be emboldened and they'll come back in, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. But eventually they'll come back because Russia as an empire cannot restructure itself, and it can't. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I've heard, and I don't think Americans understand here. For Putin, Trump thinks like a real estate developer.
Mm.
And for Putin, it's not about land. It's about destroying Ukraine, destroying the Ukrainian culture, wiping it off the face of the earth, that it no longer exists. That's his ultimate end, according to what I heard and read. So how do you deal with a mindset like that of a man who is just totally fixated on eliminating eliminating a country?
Well, if Donald Trump is approaching things as a real estate developer or as
he wants Gaza to be a
transactional, right. He's a transactional kind of so-called art of the deal, what have you. If he's approaching things that way, then Putin is approaching things as an emperor and is acting like an emperor. Yes, you're right. His intention is to destroy the concept of Ukraine. I mean, the Ukraine's poet laureate, a guy by the name of Taras Shevchenko, was thrown in a prison in St. Petersburg in 1847 because he dared to write a poem in his native Ukrainian language, and he mocked the Tsar. That's 1856. This is nothing new. This is their concept of themselves as an empire, and this is the cornerstone of their empire, Ukraine. It's not NATO. It's not their security measures in the Bessarabia Gap. It's not,
all of these things may be factors, but it's their concept of empire and their ability to project imperial power by access to a warm water port in the Black Sea.
And as long as Odessa, in particular, remains a Ukrainian city,
Sevastopol, the home port for the Black Sea Fleet, which can be used to exert naval power into the Med and further, especially with their submarine fleet that's based there. They can't project that imperial power. So that's what Putin is up to when it comes to Ukraine. But I think it's bigger than that, because I don't think Putin is just looking at Ukraine. He is fixated on Ukraine. It is absolutely necessary that Ukraine falls back under Moscow's imperial dominion. But I do think Putin is looking bigger picture, and he's winning on that front as well. And that is to divide and conquer the Western world, fracture them,
turn them against one another, weaken them, so that he can take a little nibble here and a little nibble there, or he can influence this country or that country. It's not just about being Russian tanks on the Champs-Élysées. It's buying apartment buildings in Kensington in London, or influencing the Italian structure and body politic by getting villas at in Lake Como or something,
or for that matter, buying up office space in Trump Towers or what have you.
They exert their power a lot of different ways, other than just militarily. But what I think he's doing, aside from Ukraine, and I'll return to that, but before I do, he wants to destroy Western liberal democracy, and he's
being very effective at it. He has done things like use immigration as a weapon. There's a 2016
NATO white paper that was released by General Philip Breedlove, in which the NATO forces said, we see what the Russians are doing. They are using immigration as a weapon. I mean, there's a whole section of Africa, the Sahel, where they're funneling immigrants into Europe.
Evidence of that in the German elections, that the AfD.
That's right. With the AfD, it's reactionary.
And Trump and Musk, endorsing them, and
going. Well, and if you think they're doing it in Africa, but they're not doing it in Central and South America, you're naive. I'm not going to say entirely, but we are well aware that within the intelligence community that they are using Latin, South American populations as a weapon to further fracture our society. So look, all of my point is, yes, Ukraine is Moscow's absolute necessity to regain utter control of and destroy Ukrainian identity, because that's essential to their
capability and their sense of identity as an empire and their capability to project imperial power. But they're also looking bigger picture. And they're winning on that front as well. The information campaign, the hybrid warfare, the weaponization of immigration, all of these things are contributing to disintegrating our alliances and our internal cohesion as liberal democracies, using our free speech against us, for example, using information warfare by having Elon Musk take over Twitter, the largest communication platform on the planet. So all of that, I don't think it's just limited to Ukraine. But I guess you asked me, what can Ukrainians do? And the Ukrainians are going to do what Ukrainians always do, and the only thing that they can do, and that is fight and resist. And they're willing to die for their country. It's now or never. People don't recognize that they've been trying to break free from Moscow for centuries, certainly over a century. This is in about 100 years. This is the third Ukrainian War of Independence, and the general consensus here is, even if we are betrayed, we're going to keep fighting. So it's gonna. I can't be optimistic about it. I think there's just going to be a lot of blood and a lot of pain, and I don't see us getting to a place right now with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, where any kind of negotiated ceasefire or a peace deal is likely, even with the mineral agreement. I don't think Ukrainians are going to accept what it is that Putin and Trump are going to roll out for them, which will be a hobbled sovereignty and vulnerabilities that will ultimately be used against them, and with the ultimate goal of destroying the country. And they're not stupid. They know.
That's all for this edition of Interesting People in Extraordinary Times. I'm your host, Rick Schroeder. We'll see you next time.